The letter, sodden with tears, lay slightly crumpled on the desk. Nearby, a pink mare cried hard, her body convulsing in violent racks as she sobbed. There was no happiness today, no party that could make this better. Pinkie Pie hiccuped in the middle of her breakdown, tears still streaming down her face. She just couldn't believe it. It had only been 3 days since she waved goodbye to them, wishing them luck on their trip. She could still remember seeing them off at the train station. Their smiling faces refused to leave her mind. She started crying all over again as they winked at her, wishing her well and making sure she looked after the... Pinkie Pie jolted up. The twins! Somebody had to tell the twins. Oh, wait, Pinkie mumbled. That some pony would be me. They would like you to become the legal guardian of their foals. Fresh tears welled up in the mare's eyes, spilling over as she stared at the unfortunate letter, the devastating news. How would Sugar Cube Corner fare without the ponies who started it up, gave it enough love to grow from a shanty little treat shop to the town's premier sweet tooth? Who would teach the kids how to run the store? Pinkie Pie shook her head as she realized she was breathing heavily again. No, first things first is to tell the twins, after all. She looked back at the letter nervously. I guess they're my foals now, right, Mrs. Cake? She shook her head. Her mane had deflated considerably, hanging limply from her scalp like dry locks of thick ropes and weeds. She glanced at herself in the reflection from the window. It was raining outside. I should probably go clean myself up a little first, though, she muttered. She could see in her reflection that her face was slick with drying tears, her eyes puffy and red. She got up to go to the washroom, only for 2 little ponies to come falling down the stairs, growling and grappling with each other. Get off me, cried the creamy orange unicorn, squealing as her tan brother tugged at the thick curls of blazing orange his jaw was clamped around. He responded by growling even louder. Ah! She screamed, trying to push her brother off. She quickly gave up, realizing it was no use. She saw her Aunt Pinkie out of the corner of her eye and immediately made a beeline towards her, dragging her brother along behind her. Auntie Pinkie Pie, she cried, jumping at the pink mare and clutching her leg tight. Auntie Pinkie, get him off! Pinkie Pie looked down at the innocent twins. Pumpkin continued squealing in irritation as Pound Cake nommed away at the thick pumpkin mane. They had no idea how much their life had just changed. She had to tell them. She had to. This was what the Cakes wanted. This is why they chose her on their will. Why they had a will, Pinkie hadn't the slightest idea, but... Pound, stop! Pinkie commanded the Pegasus with a stern voice, far more serious in tone than she'd ever used before in her life. Pound was obviously intimidated as he immediately spat out Pumpkin's hair, his ears flicking back as he looked at the floor in shame. Sorry, Auntie, he mumbled, his poor speech a bit thicker and deeper than other colts his age. Pinkie Pie felt a sharp pain in her heart as she looked down at the 2 foals. If she agreed, then her foals. More tears sprang up in the corners of her eyes, but she fought hard to keep the bulk of them at bay. She needed to be strong. For the foals, she needed to be strong. Pound, Pumpkin, I have some bad news for you 2, she said. Pumpkin cocked her head. Many things were going through the little unicorn's head. Why wouldn't Pound just let go when she told him to? Why did he always have to be so annoying? What was that letter on the desk? Why did it have to be raining outside? Why wouldn't Auntie Pinkie Pie let her go play outside? But there was one thought that stood out amongst the others, a thought she shared with her curious brother. Why was Auntie Pinkie Pie crying? I know you both like having me as a foal sitter, and believe me, I love foal sitting you 2 so much as well, she said with a weak smile. But, it looks like I'll be watching over you guys for a little while longer than Mommy and Daddy told you. Pound giggled while Pumpkin smiled wide. Yay! They both sang in unison, eyes wide and gleaming. That is, until Pound Cake remembered that Auntie Pinkie Pie had been crying. Was it because she would be watching them? Why would she be crying if she got to spend more time with them? She was the best foal sitter in the world. Why would she be crying? Auntie, what's wrong? Pound asked as he reared up, putting a small hoof against Pinkie's thigh. She looked down at Pound's confused face. Pumpkin was still smiling happily, oblivious to what her aunt needed to say. The walls broke. Tears gushed down her face again. She picked up Pound and held him close, hugging him tightly. Pound hugged back. He was a snuggler for sure. Pumpkin, to her credit, finally read the atmosphere and stopped smiling. Pinkie Pie eventually put Pound down next to his sister, looking at them with a sad face. "There's a reason why I'm going to be watching you guys a bit longer," she explained. "It's because Mommy and Daddy—" Her throat closed up as she felt her head growing light. These were words no foal should ever hear, words Pinkie never wanted to tell any pony. There would be no parties tonight, none at all. "Mommy and Daddy, they—" Pound and Pumpkin looked at Pinkie expectantly. She took a ragged breath, wiping her face clean of tears before forcing herself to finish. "Mommy and Daddy aren't coming back, so I'm going to be your new mommy." The twins, bless their innocence, were oblivious to what Pinkie truly meant by that. The only part they caught was that Pinkie Pie, the funnest pony in all of Ponyville, was their new mommy. They whooped as they jumped up and down. No more bedtimes, no more baths. They smiled wide as they bumped hooves with each other. No more boring chores, no more story time. They suddenly cast each other surprised looks. No more catch with Daddy or cooking with Mommy. They felt small tears welling up in their eyes. No more cuddle time, no more funny stories. The two very confused foals looked up at Pinkie Pie. "What do you mean Mommy and Daddy aren't coming back?" Pumpkin asked, her voice shaky. Pinkie Pie needed to be strong for them, now more than ever. She wanted to be strong for them. She really wanted to. She wanted to. With a sharp gasp, she broke down, bawling her head off. Realizing that this wasn't the happy news they were expecting at all, the twins joined in with her. On the table, the letter lay dormant, uncaring for the harsh, blunt information it gave to the grieving family. "Dear Miss Pie, we in Baltimore regret to inform you that due to extreme weather conditions, your employers were unfortunately taken, and in conjunction with their will, they would like you to become the legal guardian of their foals." It was raining outside. It would be raining for a long time. Chapter 2. "And if you'll just sign here, Miss Pie, everything will be done and finalized." Pinkie Pie nodded, determined, before bobbing the pen clutched between her lips over to the line the caseworker had pointed out, scrawling a fast but bubbly signature across the line. She pulled her head back and let the pen drop to the table, sighing with relief and wiping a leg across her forehead while the gray mare before her levitated the small stack of papers over to a filing cabinet, flicking a few more pages here and there. "It will take a few days to get all of these correctly sorted with all of the branches, ma'am," the full services caseworker explained as she returned to Pinkie Pie. "But as of now, you are officially the legal guardian of Pound Cake and Pumpkin Cake." Pinkie Pie couldn't help it. She burst out into a huge smile. She leapt out of her seat, grabbing the other mare in a tight hug and spinning them around the room. "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you," she practically sang, dislodging herself from the stunned mare and continuing to spin out of the room and down the hall, giggling all the way. "Celestia help those children," the mare chuckled softly to herself before continuing about her job. Meanwhile, Pinkie Pie twirled into the waiting room, where Pound and Pumpkin were playing in a small penned-off area with a young employee, another gray mare. Sure, the twins were a little too old to be confined to a playpen, but Pinkie Pie couldn't take them into the case room with her, and the mare had assured her that they would be fine under her care. It was kind of her job, after all, to watch the foals of the company's clients. The twins lit up when they saw Pinkie enter the room. Giggling, they dropped their blocks and rushed over to her, Pound flittering his wings excitedly while Pumpkin's horn sparkled happily. "Auntie Pinkie!" both of them exclaimed, plowing into the pink mare and tackling her over. They laughed as they nuzzled her happily, an affection which she returned. She really did love these kids. "Hey guys, did you miss me?" she asked. They both jumped away from her, hopping up and down. "Yeah," they replied back, full of excitement. Pinkie let herself smile. The past 2 weeks had been a paperwork nightmare. She didn't get to smile all that often, but now she broke out into a huge grin at the foals. Her foals. "Were you too good for Miss Amber?" she questioned. They smiled wide and nodded. Behind them, Amber stood up, smirking softly. "They were little angels, so sweet. I take it that everything has been taken care of, Miss Pinkie?" Pinkie beamed and nodded as she ruffled Pumpkin's mane. The unicorn giggled from the attention. "Yeppers peppers, Amber Eppers. Everything's all okie dokie Loki now." Amber nodded, giving Pinkie Pie an approving look as the two foals laughed while playing with each other, Pound chasing Pumpkin around Pinkie's legs. Pinkie herself was chuckling as she spun around in a circle, trying to keep up. Well, I wish you the best of luck, Amber told Pinkie Pie. She stopped to look at the gray mare, giving her the widest grin she could muster. Thanks so much, and thanks again for looking after the foals. Usually that's my job. Pinkie paused, bringing a hoof to her lips as she gave thought. Pound and Pumpkin stopped running around and looked up at Pinkie before mimicking her, putting a hoof up to their own thinking faces. At last, Pinkie gasped enthusiastically, picking up both of the foals and hugging them tightly. I guess it really is my job now, huh? She asked the two, rubbing her nose against Pumpkin's. That's right, it's my job, isn't it? Pumpkin shrieked happily as she was nuzzled by Pinkie Pie. Amber giggled softly before waving goodbye to the happy family as they trotted out of the building, each foal holding onto one of Pinkie's front legs and riding along with her strides. The rain had stopped outside. The sun was shining. It was a good day. So what do you guys want to go do today? She asked her foals as she looked down at them. No work, just play, okay? The foals cheered before disembarking off of Pinkie's legs, darting along the street. Pinkie chased after them, making sure that they didn't hurt themselves, but letting them have their fun. After a while, they made it to the park. It was a little busy, maybe 10 other colts and fillies running around on the grass. The two twins rushed over to an empty teeter-totter and jumped on, going at it. Pinkie Pie let out a sigh as she smiled, seeing the twins playing. They'd been so sad since they heard the news, it was refreshing to see them having fun like normal foals. A couple of other foals approached the twins, giggling and jumping up and down. Pinkie Pie couldn't hear what was being said between the four, but from the twins' reactions, they were having a great time. Only moments later, one of them tapped Pound before he and the two fillies scattered away, leaving Pound it. The sun had gone far in its descent by the time the foals were far too exhausted to continue playing. It had been a good day. You're really fast, exclaimed the tiny white earth pony, jumping as he spoke to emphasize his point. Thanks, Pound beamed, puffing his chest out proudly. Pumpkin pushed him from the side, knocking him over. The three foals laughed, Pound fuming before he relented, chuckling along too as he pushed himself up. He then pushed Pumpkin over. Flit, Violet. The two other foals looked over to see their parents waving them over. Come on, let's go home. The white earth pony and his sister, a purple unicorn, groaned. Aw, do we have to? Flit yelled back. His mother laughed in mock annoyance. Yes, she responded. Violet groaned. Fine. She then turned to Pound and Pumpkin. Parents are so annoying, aren't they? Pound gulped hard, while Pumpkin shivered involuntarily, feeling herself blush slightly. Pumpkin gave the other mare a genuinely confused look. Why'd you say that? I mean, they care about you, right? Flit laughed. Yeah, but they have so many rules. I wish we didn't have them sometimes, then we could play for as long as we want. Pound shook his head as he felt his face going red. His heart was beating fast. How could they say that they didn't want their parents? Pound missed his mommy and daddy a lot. He'd never want them gone if he could have them back. Well, bye, the two foals shouted before rushing over towards their parents, leaving the twins alone. A soft breeze ruffled the grass around them, stirring up a few loose leaves. Pound? Pumpkin said quietly. You never wanted Mommy and Daddy to go, did you? Pound shook his head violently. Of course not, he exclaimed. Did you? Pumpkin shook her head as well. No, never. The sky darkened as the sun fell lower in the sky. Celestia would lower the sun completely soon, leaving the night to Luna's moon. Then why'd they go if we didn't want them to? Pumpkin whimpered. Pound fell back onto his flank, tears growing in his eyes. I don't know. I miss Mommy. Pumpkin sniffled as she nodded. So do I. She closed her eyes, sniffling hard. She missed being held by Mommy when she was upset, having Daddy run a hoof through her mane and tell her everything would be all right. Suddenly she felt a hoof very lightly pull her in for a deep hug. Her eyes opened wide to see Pinkie Pie holding her close, hugging her and Pound tightly. Pinkie Pie smiled sadly as she held her foals tight to her. She'd heard the little conversation they'd had with the other foals and could only imagine what they were feeling right then. It couldn't have been easy to lose the ones you love the most, especially at so young. But she squeezed them tighter, vowing never to let go. I love you guys, she whispered to the two, nuzzling them softly. Pound and Pumpkin slowly felt themselves relax. Mommy and Daddy were gone, and they knew they weren't coming back. But they still had Auntie Pinkie, right? The twins grasped Pinkie Pie tightly, hugging her back. Yeah, Auntie Pinkie was great. She was super funny, threw the best parties, and always knew how to make them feel better. Plus, she gave great hugs. Pinkie Pie smiled as she felt the twins growing tired against her. They'd worn themselves out from playing for so long. It was time to head home. "Come on," she said to them. "Let's go back home." Pound yawned as Pumpkin nodded. Pinkie picked up Pound and set him on her back as she took Pumpkin's hoof in her own and then started heading back to their home. At home, they did everything they were told to do for getting ready for bed. They brushed their teeth, made sure their room was clean, and said their nighttime prayers. Pinkie Pie politely joined in. "And Mrs. and Mr. Cake, if you hear me, your foals miss you. A lot. But I promise you I'll take lots of good care of them. Pinkie promise. Cross my heart and hope to fly, stick a cupcake in my eye." She bowed her head before rising, smiling softly. She watched as the foals climbed into bed. Pinkie trotted over to Pumpkin and kissed her on the forehead. The little unicorn giggled before nuzzling Pinkie and rolling onto her side, quickly drifting off to sleep. She trotted over to Pound and kissed him on his forehead as well. He was struggling to stay awake, but as soon as Pinkie's lips touched his forehead, he couldn't keep it up. "Night, Mommy," he whispered as he slowly trailed off into a slumber. Pinkie froze. "Mommy?" she whispered. She shook her head as she trotted out of the room, turning off the bedroom light. No, I couldn't be a mommy," she told herself, but paused as a glimmer caught her eye. She trotted over to a small picture on the table. She'd caught the reflection of one of the lights in a family picture of the Cakes. Carrot was holding a delighted Pumpkin while Cup cradled Pound, who was asleep. Pinkie herself was suspended in midair between the two, having jumped at just the right moment to be in the picture. She smiled as she looked at the family. Some of it was missing and would never be back. Mommy, huh? Pinkie could have sworn that Cupcake winked at her in the picture. She sighed before smiling softly, putting the picture back down. "I think I could do something like that," she said with a gleam in her eye. "But if that's the case, I'll have to ready my party cannon." She darted off towards her room, passing by a picture of her holding both of the twins. They were all so happy in the picture, just like a perfect family already. Outside, it started to rain. That was We Regret to Inform You by Waldo the Digital Hex, recommended to me by Anime Wolf Gamer. I must say, reading stories like this makes me better appreciate Pinkie Pie. I tend to admire characters who are able to strive onward and find hope despite tragic circumstances, especially characters who do so for the sake of others, who need them to be strong. I hope that everyone listening to this story will better appreciate their loved ones today. You never know when your circumstances in life may change forever. Treasure the moments you have now, and be strong for those who are in need of your support. Until next time, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.